I don't think there's the connection between people like there used to be. And I think that this concert has really evolved into bringing people closer together, bringing back those personal connections of your neighbors and people that you live by.
Tony lives on Mondale Court here. She's sort of a recent resident compared to me. She's been here a couple of years. When she moved in the neighborhood, and she, the first thing I noticed was her license plate, which says Jazz. That was sort of a magnet toward her.
Check 1, 2, 3. We are ready.
My name is Tony Jakovac, and I am professionally, it's complicated.
The concert is going to continue.
She had this idea to have an outdoor concert, jazz concert.
COVID started this, and I suspect that's the case. We were, of course, locked down like everybody else, but that was not going well. And we needed some contact. So I don't remember whose idea it was originally, but we started to pull out our lawn chairs into the cul-de-sac, socially distanced, and have cocktails at certain times of the week. And while we were doing that, it occurred to me that we could do more. It didn't have to just be the few of us, it could be the many of us. I have never put a concert on before. I have absolutely no background in this. But I knew a lot of musicians, and I can't remember I believe that I read on Facebook somewhere that someone had what they called a driveway concert. And that was the impetus. I thought, my God, if they can do it in their driveway, there's no reason in the world we can't do it here at the cul-de-sac. I talked to the neighbors and I said, listen, can I get some sponsors and we can have live music?
Absolutely. I remember meeting Tony and saying, she said, hey, we're going to do this concert in the cul-de-sac and it's going to be completely social distanced, and so we can't have any, we really can't have guests, but let's do this. Are you up for it?
The next thing you know, it was time, and everybody was socially distanced that first year. Gosh, people were all over the place, really far apart, but the sound was terrific, and everybody was so happy. And I passed the hat, we raised some more money for the musicians, and that was it. I had a jazz mentor, my Uncle Jack. And Uncle Jack he ran the local newspaper, the Belleville Recorder. And it was part of his family. He had inherited it from his parents who had run it. And he was a frustrated sax player, jazz man. I think of him often in terms of Jimmy Stewart in It's a Wonderful Life. He just wanted to get out of this town and be a jazz man, and he was stuck with this newspaper. He was very good at it, please understand. I mean, he did a beautiful job. He was the town photographer, but deep down he wanted to play jazz. At any rate, when we would go over there, you had to walk past this little den, which is where he had the stereo, and he'd say, Tony, I got a new Stan Kenton album or something like that, or Woody Herman. Those were his biggies. And I would go in there right away and I would listen. Now, I had great affection for Uncle Jack, and he had been almost like a father to me most of my young life because my parents were divorced. And I lived with my mother, and I didn't really have a male influence in my life. So I was drawn to this man. First of all, he was charismatic anyway. It wasn't just me. This was a interesting, funny, God, he had a great sense of humor, man. And so I wanted to please him. And I knew one way to do that was to connect with this music. But the funny thing was, it ended up connecting with me. In those days, jazz bands were still touring, but mostly colleges, because the big dance halls were gone, and after the war they just weren't, it wasn't the same atmosphere at all. However, especially in terms of Kenton, they found a willing audience in college campuses. So they would come to the university here, but then he would also play whatever local clubs to maximize their income while they were in an area. And there was this little club in Middleton in those days. It was called the Chanticleer. It was a real nightclub. There were tables with tablecloths, and there was a band area. And Uncle Jack wanted to go see Stan Kenton, but in Belleville, I don't mean to make a sweeping statement, jazz wasn't really big. And so he didn't have anybody to go with. So he would take us kids. By the time I was an adult, I was living in San Francisco area, Palo Alto area actually, and I was a volunteer at the local jazz station, KCSM. I went to Yoshi's at every opportunity and introduced my husband slowly but surely to jazz. And then we started going to the Monterey Jazz Festival every year for our anniversary. While I was in California, I found out that Dr. Herb Wong was teaching jazz classes at Palo Alto High School at night. And it was, I'm trying to remember, I think it was like 3 nights a week. It was an intense class, but fascinating. I had never had music education so specific before. I got involved with the Madison Music Collective and ultimately ended up on the board, which is where I met Howard. And I was tapped to write grants for the Music Collective. And I had never written a grant in my life, but there's a bit of a theme here. There's a lot of things I tackled that I had never done before. I live without a net a little bit. At any rate, Howard was a professional grant writer. So he offered to school me on how to do this. And with that came his incredible knowledge of the local jazz scene. And I was delighted to be able to have access the way you do in a smaller town like Madison versus what it was like in the Bay Area. I was eager then too, but there just was no access. Which I sort of took for granted. I guess I just thought, well, you know, you're either a big musician, a promoter, or you just don't get to play with these people. That isn't the case here in Madison. It's a very open scene. It's a very welcoming scene. They're eager for any kind of volunteer help they can get. And that it was the perfect time in my life to be able to do that. You asked me about starting up the concerts here in Mondale. There is a thread of that actually back to Dr. Herb Wong, because he started the Palo Alto Jazz Festival. And I remember talking to him about going, how in heaven's sake did you start a jazz festival? And he said, well, you know some musicians, you give them a call, and the next thing you know, you got a jazz festival.
My name's Betsy Ezel, and the group doesn't really have a name, but the project that we're playing music from is called Cul-de-sac. And we were just chatting, and she mentioned this neighborhood show and how she was trying to get somebody else to do it, and they hadn't been getting back to her, and so just kind of like, she was like, what if you guys did it? I was like, that'd be great.
This lineup is some of the best musicians in town, and I had never heard all of them play together in a band and then doing this material, so it sounded great. I wanted to come and hear it, and not the least of it is the atmosphere.
I am eager to expose people to something that I might know about jazz that they don't know. But my main goal is to just light a spark about jazz in general.
This is actually the third one of these that she's produced. And we started hearing comments a little bit after the first one, quite a bit more after the second one, about how good they are, how the people enjoyed it, that sort of thing. And we weren't really planning to come back because we were on vacation through Sunday, but just thought about it and wanted to get a first-hand idea of what's going on back here every September. So we drove back that morning so we would get here in plenty of time.
This is really something special. It's our own personal concert on the square. We have that Madison Chamber Orchestra in downtown Madison, and people lay out their blankets. And here it is, right in our very own neighborhood, that we get to have an evening of music all to ourselves.
Music matters to me. It speaks to me. I tell people all the time I love movies, but I have found out the truth of the matter is it's the soundtrack I love usually.
Well, I think it's something people have come to look forward to. And I heard some comments after the performance was over, people going up to Tony and being assured that she would do this again next year.
For my money, I always knew that was going to happen. For me, if you expose people to it, they're going to love it. I am convinced every single time. I am always surprised when someone comes up to me and says, you know, I really didn't like that. Great. Were you listening?
I mean, the energy she brings to this little half of a duplex on the cul-de-sac, and how she has brought us together, and the fact that, we're blessed. We have a dozen people here tonight that are looking forward to this event every year, and it's because of what Tony has brought to our neighborhood.
I went to dinner just a few days ago, as a matter of fact, with Bert and Scott, who live down in the corner there of the cul-de-sac, and we were having a wonderful time. It was one of their birthdays, Scott's birthday, in fact, and we were talking, and I was enjoying myself immensely, and I told them what a delight it is that this was my favorite part of a relationship, that getting to know each other, finding out what you like and understand and share in common. And Scott piped in and said, it's the honeymoon phase. And I said, yes. And then I thought, and I went, no, it's not the honeymoon phase yet. No, it's before that. It's when you're like courting. And Scott looked at me and he said, Mondale Courting. And of course, that is ideal. That's what we're all doing here. We are all Mondale Courting. We're getting to know each other better. We're finding out our strengths and our weaknesses, and it's the best of times, It's a great thing, yeah.